Southport's like St Anne's on steroids, a combination of London, Morecambe, Fleetwood and Lytham, kettled by an army of pay and display meters that guzzle money with more ferocity than Eric Pickles at an all-you-can-eat buffet. The town is no longer Lancastrian, which explains why it's gone downhill massively. However, it was once part of Lancashire historically, so we thought we'd better include it. According to Wikipedia, Southport was founded in 1792, when William Sutton, an innkeeper from Churchtown, that's the historically preserved by the Rotary Club Churchtown in Southport, obviously, not the Churchtown where just rich people live in the Wire, built a bathing house among the sand dunes at what is nowadays the south end of Lord Street. I'm not entirely sure that a bathing house constitutes the foundation of a town, but life's too short to argue. 7 years later, a widow from Wigan, Wikipedia doesn't furnish us with her name, built a cottage nearby for seasonal lodgers. Sutton responded by building an inn on the site of his now former bathing house, which he called the Southport Hotel, although the locals preferred the name the Duke's Folly. And so, accompanied by the onslaught of the industrial age, Southport rapidly expanded into the monstrous carbuncle it is today. Southport has a pier, possibly the longest, most pointless construction in Britain, where the fish and chip vendors compete with the pay and display meters for the title of most expensive tourist exploitation. There are sand dunes, allegedly, although the promenade was closed the day we visited, so we couldn't actually film them, where the much coveted natterjack toads live. The town also boasts one of Britain's oldest newspapers, the Southport Visitor, born on Star Wars Day, that's May the 4th, 1844, at a disused slaughterhouse on Lord Street where the Vincent Hotel currently stands. The history of the area goes back further than the 18th century, of course. Prehistoric footprints have been uncovered by the tide, both early human and equally early animals, such as aurochs and wild boars and red deer and, not quite as exciting perhaps, cranes. A bit later, chronologically, there were Romans, as evidenced by the coins discovered at Crosslands, and Vikings, as evidenced by the name North Meols, which refers to a Viking marketplace, neither of which we could be bothered fighting the bumper-to-bumper traffic to track down. In fact, the district was recorded in the Domesday Book as Otagimiel. God only knows what that meant, but apparently it consisted of 50 huts and 200 people. Perhaps the most famous fact about Southport is that Paris is based on it. Well, on the Lord Street end of it at any rate. Napoleon III, not Bonaparte it should be pointed out, who lived in lodgings just off the aforementioned Lord Street, was so inspired by the place that between 1854 and 1870 he orchestrated the reconstruction of the French capital based on Southport's design. That's put me off visiting Paris, it must be said. One bit of architecture we did rather like was the Wayfarers Arcade, opened on October the 1st, 1898, after having taken 8 years to construct. It's now Grade 2 listed. Unfortunately, that's about all we could find to say about it, really. But history's boring. Well, Southport's is, at any rate. Let's have some folklore instead. Starting with the now demolished Birkdale Palace Hotel, where Frank Sinatra occasionally stayed, haunted by a young girl murdered by a hotel employee. And there's the mythical Formby Beast, a huge black dog with red eyes known as Old Trash or Striker depending on your preference, said to prowl the dunes, bringing bad luck or death to anyone who happens to see it. Then there's Ralph's Wife's Lane, where misogyny lurks on every corner, believed to be regularly visited by the aforementioned Ralph's wife, who obviously wasn't important enough to have her own name, in the form of a gaseous glow. Legend has it that she walked the lane for many years in the hopes that her husband, Ralph, presumably a fisherman lost at sea, would return home. Mention should be made perhaps of Tony Topping, a UFO expert, who coincidentally was buzzed by an unidentified flying object on Southport Beach back in 2016, just before hosting, even more coincidentally, a UFO conference in the town. Then there's the 300 bodies buried beneath Costa Coffee. Back in the 19th century, this was the site of the Congregational Church burial ground. When the current building was under construction, the company responsible offered to reinter elsewhere the bodies of any family members of those who required the service. Given that many of the graves dated back centuries, quite a lot of the bodies were never moved. We explained this to the waitress, who wanted to know why we were filming the inside of the building. She hadn't heard of the corpses before. It's probably only a matter of time now before reports of the hauntings of Costa Coffee appear in the paranormal database. Finally, there's the White Lady of Meals Hall, frequently spotted by milkmen. Don't ask me why milkmen in particular, or those yogurts must be good for the second sight or something, around the Churchtown area. And so to the miniature railway, which we didn't film because we couldn't find anywhere to park. And besides which, by the time we reached it, me and Jeannie McIntosh were getting completely fed up with the whole town. And yes, we really are that desperate to find things to say about Southport. It was constructed in 1911 by Miniature Railways of Great Britain Limited, using materials provided by the model engineering business Bassett Lauk. Henry Greenlee provided expert engineering advice, and the line was originally named the Southport Miniature Railway, being operated by Dr. Ladmore, a local dentist. I'm sorry, I'm losing the will to live. We're not going to leave Southport without mentioning St Cuthbert's, which was around in 1154. Unfortunately, it burnt down and was rebuilt in 1730, recycling some of the gravestones in the walls to save money, apparently. Which isn't quite as exciting, but it does have some stock dating to 1741. And the aforementioned founder of Southport, William Sutton, is buried somewhere in the graveyard, or so it's reckoned. There's also a botanic gardens round the back of St Cuthbert's somewhere. It's a bit like Stanley Park in Blackpool, only full of screaming kids and imprisoned parrots. On which exciting highlight we headed back to the car and returned to Lancashire proper, wondering why everybody had told us that Southport was upmarket and posh when clearly it wasn't.
Barnaby, that bears my name. Never call me Jack or James. I will sing my way to fame. Barnaby, that bears my name. Birds taught me to sing when they took me to their king. First I had to fly in the sky so high, so high, so high, so high, so high. So if you want to sing this way...